So I suppose this is yet another rambling, but I shall try to make it an interesting, if not eloquent, one. I am not certain how to reconcile the pattern of human behavior that is discrimination. And I don't mean this in the form of white guilt necessarily. I mean this in um, humans overall. This isn't an all lives matter speech. This is an acknowledgement of what it means to be human. To be human is to err, often deliberately, sometimes subconsciously, sometimes against one based on something as simple as their skin, and then progressively based on their culture. Because what we see in this modern United States crisis of the whites versus blacks, the police brutality or alleged police brutality, the prejudice against those, particularly of darker complexion, those of Islamic religion. That is something we, if we were to analyze any other point in history, would have little trouble doing. From even pre-colonial times, pre-European imperialism, it was simply something that people did. It was a way to sort people. There was a heuristic a behavioral heuristic to help us navigate who's friend, who's foe in the tribal eras, but it was preyed upon and allowed to mutate, evolve, or devolve into racism, into actively coding people based on their skin color and treating them separately and worse because of it. But we could look at the the Persians and the Greeks, the hatred they had for each other, the Chinese, Japanese. We go further back. We look at the Israelites and the Philistines, although I mean they are arguably the same complexion, but that was because we couldn't travel the distances we can now, or that humanity learned how to do. Um, the Celtics, those of Celtic origin, were thought to be subhuman by the Romans. It was. This is. I mean, when we look at like, how could somebody do something so horrible? Say, go back to your country, or hope you die in the next terrorist attack to a Somali or a Muslim. I hope that you that you are forever apart from me and out of my experience of life to anybody who's not white. That it doesn't strike me as is or is odd. It strikes me as horrible, but it does not strike me as odd. I mean, people are analyzing the current events as if it's a unique instance. Like, like whites invented this. I mean, it certainly is unique in terms of how Europeans utilize capitalism. They capitalized, if you will, on that, and the way things are structured now is arguably unique. But it's the idea that we will treat people as less than us based on a certain characteristic. And I mean, this one is skin color, but their class or their language or their beliefs, or take your pick. We we are a hierarchical society, and we keep trying to pretend that's not the case. One might point to early tribal societies, Paleolithic, where they a lot of people want to argue that, or anthropologists or people who are citing anthropologists might want to argue that they were much more egalitarian. Their gender roles were uh, arguably smudged into non-existence. Um, and that may be the case for some of them, but that's not the case for all of them. There's It's estimated that like 55%, well, at least in a book I read about, it was a memoir of sexual abuse, but it was talking about how there was no reports of this in these, and I don't know how whenever you're looking into the past, it's very questionable, but most tribes were not separated by gender. They were not experiencing sexual assault like that. But then there's 45% left. It's almost half of what Napoleon. No. I can't remember his name. Anthropologist Chagnon. He, observed indigenous tribes in South America near the Amazon were regular raids of the men into the opposing tribes to rape and their women and pillage, where it's a ritual. It seems that I mean, if we could say, all right, it's half and half. It's good and evil. It, we've got the good people and the bad people, if you're going to categorize it according to our set of morality and ethics that most would want to agree on. Rape bad, murder bad. That's still not promising. I mean, the what people might say is the minority of people doing bad things, and now a lot of scholars, intellectuals, and privy to the Black Lives Matter movement say that that the majority of white people are unconsciously or subconsciously racist, and they're not trying to, but they are doing something that's subjugating an entire uh, selection of people. That's not promising. That's disheartening. I mean, it's not as clear cut as a 50-50 as a 55 or 45, but it's enough to say that, well, I mean, what has changed? Well, we ask ourselves, what has changed? Technology? Have things? I would say that things have become more comfortable, but take these things away, what do we become? The most impoverished groups of people, regardless of their ethnicity, but especially if they're being discriminated against, are more likely to commit crimes. Because what do you do when you don't have access to the normal avenues of resource and meeting your needs, your basic needs? especially when you're watching other people get theirs met. You you resort to the crime, or what we deem it to be crime. You steal. You um, are more aggressive, sometimes physically. So you in a way invent your own economy, whether that be drugs or prostitution. Um, but the fact that they're not going away, and if they do go away, it's only because we've been pacified so much. We've been given so many treats like a dog that our snout is just smushed in the bag, so we can't get our nose into any shit. And I mean, like, all of us, like, if there were ever one where blacks, or, and I believe there will be, it might be unfortunately very distant, but blacks or other disenfranchised groups, we get that to that level, is because we now all have our snout in the bag. When it's not just the whites anymore.